Get a comfier chair because we're here on day 61. This is not advice. And if anybody has tips about the best core strengthening chair, I think I'm ready to make that plunge. We are answering your questions about work, not giving you advice. And I'm here with Min. Min, what are we talking about all week this week? I like the fact that we're now doing things on themes.
Yeah, I mean, this week we're talking about like career shifts and mentorship and how do you find those things. And so today's question was around, no one will believe me that I can apply my previous experience to a new job. Like, why won't they hire me?
Yeah, I was talking to a woman who I used to work with who has like great general skills in a bunch of areas. And sorry, I should be more specific than that. She has specific skills in several different areas, but translating the language of those skills, like she did program management, maybe, I mean, this is just a random example. And I've had this problem myself in that, like, I went from government to the private sector. And here's my basic answer. There's a myth. And the myth is, if only I can find the right way to explain it, then they'll see that, in fact, my work, being captain of the football team or whatever, quarterback of the football team is just like being an investment banker. Or more realistically, kind of later in your career, they'll realize that my experience being a personal trainer will really apply to sales or something like that. It does not work that way. Like, I don't think I've never seen somebody succeed at the translation exercise. I think that after the fact, people then say, well, of course, she was so good at X because she had a baking business as a child, and that's why she's good at timing things. But that's all retroactive. I think that to get in the headspace of what a manager is doing, and it's not to say you shouldn't try a bit, but I think the main problem is not that. The main problem is why, not how it should work, but how does it actually work? Why does somebody hire another person? Because they believe that they have some burning problem that person can solve, in which case then translating your experience can matter, but it's like, you got to be exceptional in other ways. And B, will my status in the organization go up or down when I tell my colleagues about the bio of the person I hired? And if you're not an obvious fit, well, then you're asking the person to pay a status price. And so how do you compensate them for the risk and the price that they're going to pay? And so I think about things like, can you be more flexible about title? Can you take an ambiguous job and prove yourself? I mean, this woman I talked to had the classic idea, which is, I'll work for you for a month before you figure out if you want to hire me. That's a great way for somebody to try before they buy, figure it out. Not everybody's in a position to be able to do that. But of course, if you are, then I think those are the ways to reduce the risk to the person hiring you, as opposed to try to convince them it's not as risky as they think. That's my general sentiment.
I mean, I do think that some of this changes by where you are in your career too. Like if you're earlier in your career and you're maybe, you're going from an entry level role and trying to transition. I feel like I've heard several friends trying to make the shift into product management, for example, which is already an ambiguous role. And so then it ends up the way you kind of de-risk that hiring process is here's some of the things I've done.
Totally.
Things like that.
I built a thing on the side. And so I think one of the things, Min, that I hear in that is the experience of making it work does vary depending on where you are in your career. And one way to look at it is it's actually easier at the very beginning of your career because you're not really being hired on your experience anyway. Right. Nobody really has experience. It's easier much later in your career if you've been successful, because then you're hired for more meta qualities if the person knows you already or something like that. And we talked about career switchers who were big in the business world and went in government or vice versa. The hardest part is the middle, which is also when those choices are really valuable and painful, because those also tend to be the time in your life where you're proud of what you can do and bummed other people can't see it. Or you have to pay a higher rent because you're further along in life, or a mortgage or something like that. And so it really is, I think it's so well put that it's a different kind of issue depending on the stage you're at in your career.
Totally. And it kind of extends what we were saying yesterday about what is the price you're willing to pay?
Where are we? Yeah, I'm just back home. So it's that day in the car, somebody texted me and they're like, don't do that again. We don't want you to die doing this YouTube, Twitter video thing.
But yeah, I think knowing what is the, I don't know, quote unquote price you're willing to pay to be able to make that transition.
Yes.
With my clock.
Or setting yourself up to do it. Well, it means it's our time. I've got to go speak to my writing coach now.
Sounds good. So we'll be back tomorrow. We're sharing what we learn, and ask us your questions, and feel free to share this along with people that you think might find it interesting.
Yay. All right, cool.